I've been in this game for 50 years, and the last thing I ever thought about was having my hands
in the peaceful hills of Malibu, where the ocean breeze whispers through the palm trees. One of Hollywood's most beloved actresses lived a life that seemed picture-perfect. Katharine Ross, the star who dazzled audiences in The Graduate and Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, was admired for her grace, beauty, and unforgettable performances. But behind that golden image was a shocking truth that even her closest fans could hardly believe. In a heartbreaking twist that felt more like a dark Hollywood script than real life, Ross was attacked by her very own daughter, a moment that shattered the illusion of glamour and revealed the painful struggles she carried in silence. This is the story of Katharine Ross, a woman whose journey proves that even those who shine the brightest on screen can face the darkest tragedies behind closed doors. Katharine Ross was born on January 29, 1940 in Hollywood, California, at the very peak of cinema's golden age. It seemed only natural that one day she would step into its glow. Her childhood was marked by constant moves, a restless rhythm that would foreshadow the unpredictable turns of her career and personal life. Films offered her a language of dreams, and she longed to speak it. Her first steps toward that dream came at Santa Rosa Junior College, where she tentatively joined the theater program. But it was at San Francisco State University that she fully surrendered to the craft. Immersed in stage work, she began sharpening her talent with the intensity of the method acting movement sweeping through the 1960s. Still, the road was far from smooth. Like countless hopefuls, Ross started with small bit parts in television shows, often without credit. Yet those fleeting moments built the quiet precision that would become her hallmark, the ability to communicate volumes with a single look. Everything changed in 1967. Cast as Elaine Robinson in The Graduate, Ross stepped into a role that perfectly balanced innocence and turmoil. The film, a sharp reflection of a generation caught between rebellion and tradition, turned her into a star overnight. Her performance earned her an Academy Award nomination and cemented her as one of the most haunting faces of her era. Success followed quickly. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969, and The Stepford Wives, 1975, showcased her range from tender vulnerability to eerie restraint. Each role deepened her reputation as an actress, unafraid to explore the shadows beneath polished surfaces. Off-screen, Ross embodied the image of the poised modern woman, admired for her grace and quiet strength. Yet her personal life carried undercurrents of turmoil that fame could not soften. Behind the elegance and luminous screen presence lay struggles and heartbreaks that tested her resilience. Katharine Ross's journey remains a portrait both luminous and bittersweet, a reminder of how closely triumph and tragedy often walk together in Hollywood's history. Her next great triumph came with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969, where she stood her ground with effortless grace beside Paul Newman and Robert Redford. That same year, she took on a more daring part in Tell Them Willie Boy Is Here, playing Lola, a Native American woman caught in a tragic tale of love and injustice. Her sensitive performance won her the BAFTA for Best Actress, a recognition of her ability to embody characters rooted in both strength and sorrow. By the mid-1970s, Ross chose projects that carried heavier meanings. In The Stepford Wives, 1975, she portrayed Joanna Eberhardt, a woman unraveling the sinister perfection of suburban life, a role that resonated with the growing feminist wave of the era. Critics praised her ability to inject vulnerability into a story about autonomy and control. In Voyage of the Damned, 1976, she once again immersed herself in tragedy, this time within a historical drama that recreated the doomed journey of Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi Germany. Her work reflected not just acting talent, but a willingness to confront painful truths through art. Ross also transitioned her quiet strength to the screen with appearances in films such as Murder in Texas, 1981, and The Shadow Riders, 1982, in which her interpretations of multifaceted, troubled women held viewers enthralled. Both in films and on TV, she declined to opt for simple roles, instead taking on characters of depth. Off-screen, Katharine Ross's private life had as much of a tumultuous beat as the characters she played. Romance visited her quite frequently, yet it rarely lasted. Her initial marriage to actor Joel Fabiani in 1960 was short-lived and ended 2 years later, a victim of youth, drive, and the relentless speed of Tinseltown. Soon after that, she married again to John Marion in 1964. Yet that union also came undone by 1967, repeating the same pattern of career taking over from personal joy. Ross wed renowned cinematographer Conrad Hall in 1969 after meeting him during the production of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Their union, seasoned with artistic genius and professional respect, would have been a match made in heaven. However, their careers, brightly burning and exacting, held them at arm's length more often. By 1973, the marriage had ended, and Ross was again alone. Hoping for something new, she married Gaetano Ganolisi in 1974, a technician and chauffeur whom she had met while filming The Stepford Wives. The choice of husband suggested she was craving stability, even escape from the glitter and commotion of Hollywood. But even that experiment in a less frantic life did not work out, and by 1979 the marriage had ended. Katharine Ross first encountered Sam Elliott in 1978 while filming the gothic horror film The Legacy in England. Both had been in Hollywood for decades, yet their careers had followed parallel tracks without overlapping until that day. Ross was still under contract to her fourth husband, Ganolisi, at that time, while Elliott was quietly developing the unmistakable voice and rugged screen presence that would later become legendary. It was simply a professional encounter at first, yet it stirred something more fundamental, a bond of respect, allure, and belonging. The love flourished discreetly even as Ross's marriage was coming undone in the background. By 1979, her marriage to Lisi was over, and her relationship with Elliott only became more intense. Unlike her previous relationships, many of which had failed under the strain of ambition and physical distance, Elliott supplied a stabilizing steadiness, a calm amidst the storm that had characterized much of her personal existence. Their romance reached its most authentic expression in 1984 when they were wed at a simple, quiet ceremony. Differing from the spectacular nature of Hollywood marriages, theirs was a yearning for secrecy and stability. Their daughter, Cleo Rose, was born to them that same year, bringing warmth and significance to their common existence. For Ross, the marriage was a turning point, a page not marked by fleeting passion or professional strain, but by endurance, friendship, and mutual respect. Against the tumultuous background of Hollywood, her union with Elliott was her longest role. Not one acted in front of the camera, but lived off stage. For much of her life, Katharine Ross seemed to embody the quiet resilience of a woman who had endured Hollywood storms and finally found peace in her marriage to Sam Elliott and the birth of their daughter Cleo Rose. Cleo, their only child, grew up surrounded by the legacy of her parents' fame, but chose a different path, pursuing music instead of acting. Trained as a classical singer before branching into other genres, she carried the promise of a future far removed from Hollywood's glare. Yet beneath the surface of privilege and opportunity, the bond between mother and daughter was troubled, its fractures largely hidden from the public eye. Those private tensions erupted in March 2010 in a way few could have imagined. During a heated argument, Cleo, then 26, turned on her mother with shocking violence. According to reports, she threatened Ross and, in a sudden fit of rage, attacked her with scissors, stabbing her in the arm. The assault stopped before it could escalate further. But for Ross, then 70 years old, the wound was not only physical, it was the shattering of a relationship that had already carried years of strain. The aftermath forced Ross to make an agonizing decision. To protect herself, she filed for a restraining order against her only child, a stark measure that laid bare just how deeply the trust between them had collapsed. The court granted it, mandating that Cleo remain at least 100 yards away and forbidding contact of any kind. The image of the elegant actress, once admired as a symbol of strength and grace, now seeking shelter from her daughter, was a heartbreaking contrast that stunned the public. Speculation swirled in the media. Some pointed to the crushing weight of growing up under famous parents, while others suggested mental health struggles may have played a role. Neither Ross nor Cleo chose to reveal the deeper truths behind the outburst, leaving only unanswered questions. What remained was a story not of Hollywood glamour, but of the painful reality that even the most celebrated families carry shadows. For Ross, the incident marked one of the most tragic chapters of her life, a reminder that behind the curtain of fame, human frailty, and fractured love can wound more deeply than anything the cameras ever captured. Ross, despite her celebrated career, always longed for a quieter existence when it came to her home life. She wanted to give her only child the stability that the glittering yet intrusive world of Hollywood often denied. Cleo, born into that rarefied atmosphere, grew up under the watchful eyes of the public, photographed beside her famous parents, expected to reflect their legacy even before she had found her own path. From a young age, Cleo gravitated toward music, a world where she could step out from the long shadows cast by her parents. With classical training and later forays into more contemporary sounds, music became her way of carving out an identity distinct from the silver screen. Yet as much as this pursuit gave her a sense of independence, it also underscored the weight of comparison. Her efforts never carried the same acclaim as her parents' work, leaving room for frustration and feelings of invisibility. The relationship between Ross and Cleo was said to swing unpredictably between tenderness and tension. Friends and sources close to the family hinted at sharp arguments and emotional volatility that seemed to worsen with time. While the details were private, the fractures suggested unspoken needs and misunderstandings that neither fully addressed. For children of celebrated figures, the struggle for self-worth can often cut deep, and for Cleo, that battle may have been particularly painful. By the time of the violent outburst in 2010, the strain between mother and daughter had likely been building for years, simmering beneath the surface. The incident became a very public breaking point, but in truth, it was only the eruption of deeper, long-standing struggles within their bond. It revealed the hidden cost of growing up in fame's shadow, the unresolved wounds, the search for identity, and the tragic reality that even in a family built on love, the cracks can grow wide enough to shatter everything. The violent confrontation between Katharine Ross and her daughter, Cleo Rose Elliott, in 2010, did not end with physical wounds alone. It left scars that were legal, emotional, and deeply personal. In the days that followed, Ross, then 70, made the heartbreaking decision to seek protection from the very child she had raised. A restraining order was issued requiring Cleo to remain at least 100 yards away and to cut off all contact with her mother. Though framed as a necessary act of self-preservation, the legal mandate stood as a stark symbol of the fracture between them, a mother compelled to draw the sharpest possible boundary against her only daughter. For Ross, this choice was not made lightly. Filing such an order meant confronting, publicly and painfully, the truth that the relationship she once nurtured had spiraled into something dangerous. To admit that her child had become a threat was not only a measure of fear, but an acknowledgement of years of unresolved strain. It was a declaration both to herself and the world that the bond between them had collapsed under its own weight. The emotional toll was immense. Ross faced a storm of betrayal, sorrow, and lingering fear. The incident was not a quiet family matter. It was splashed across headlines, dissected by the public, and shadowed by speculation. For a woman who had always carried herself with grace and guarded her private life carefully, the intrusion was another wound. She was forced to process her trauma not in silence, but under the gaze of strangers. Her maternal heartbreak transformed into a spectacle. For Cleo, the restraining order was equally significant. Though details of her private response remain unknown, such legal intervention often brings a sobering reckoning. It may serve as a moment of painful reflection, a catalyst to confront the turmoil that had led to such violence. Whether Cleo pursued therapy, sought help, or withdrew into further isolation remains unspoken. The silence only deepened the tragedy, an open-ended narrative of what might have been resolved behind closed doors, but instead became a matter of public record. In the wake of the incident, mother and daughter were forced into a new reality, one defined by distance, both mandated and emotional. The restraining order was more than a legal document. It symbolized a rupture that could not be easily mended. The path forward, if reconciliation were ever to be attempted, would demand not only time, but an extraordinary willingness to heal old wounds with patience, forgiveness, and perhaps professional guidance. The year 2010 marked a painful rupture in Katharine Ross's personal world, one that left scars not only on her arm, but also on her spirit. The violent clash with her only daughter, Cleo, was not something easily forgotten. In the wake of that night, Katharine withdrew from the noise of Hollywood and chose a life that leaned more toward healing than performance. While details of her recovery were kept mostly private, it became clear that Katharine began to place greater value on peace and inner balance rather than chasing every project offered to her. Instead of the relentless schedule that once defined her career, she appeared only in carefully chosen works, roles that felt meaningful and manageable, ones that respected her age, her craft, and her shifting priorities. This deliberate quietness spoke volumes. She was not leaving behind her artistry, but she was protecting her well-being above all else. Katharine's bond with Sam Elliott, her husband and lifelong partner, became the anchor in this fragile chapter. Through decades of marriage, the pair had built a rare Hollywood love story, one grounded not in publicity, but in loyalty. After the turmoil with Cleo, Sam's steady presence offered her comfort and stability, shielding her from the harsher glare of public curiosity. Their marriage stood as both sanctuary and strength, helping her navigate the storm while reminding the world that behind the headlines, Katharine was still supported by love. Her relationship with Cleo after the incident remains deliberately cloaked in privacy. Neither mother nor daughter chose to speak publicly about reconciliation, leaving the public to speculate. That silence, however, suggests a choice to handle their wounds and fragile attempts at rebuilding away from the gaze of outsiders. In a life where her private world had once been so dramatically exposed, Katharine seemed determined to guard whatever healing process unfolded between them. Creativity, however, never left her. Beyond the screen, Katharine turned to other forms of expression. She and Sam co-authored a book exploring the art of love letters, an intimate project that revealed her reflective, romantic side and allowed her to channel her emotions into words rather than roles. She also embraced small-scale artistic pursuits, from local theater work to select readings, always gravitating toward projects that nurtured her soul rather than drained it. Today, Katharine Ross lives a life that is quieter but no less meaningful. She continues to appear occasionally in films and voice work, her presence still commanding the respect of audiences who grew up watching her in some of cinema's most memorable stories. But the rhythm of her life is gentler now, centered on her marriage, her creative spirit, and the privacy she fiercely protects.